Welcome to the UFOcast, episode number 19. I'm Michael.
And I'm Luke.
As always, if you've stuck with us through 19 episodes of this, you know who we are already. Today we are discussing The Cat with 10 Lives.
Ooh.
Indeed, I've actually written in my notes, ooh.
It's got one more life than normal cats.
Apparently so. Okay. Written and directed by David Tomblin.
Yes,
so
who we will talk about in Prisoner Watch.
Exactly, but also I'm going to have to sit this down as, if you were a fan of film studies, this is the auteur episode. Written and directed by, you can't have much more control than that.
Didn't we sort of have an auteur episode last time with Sound of Silence?
We did.
Because that was.
This is it. These are the pair. This is the pair of auteur episodes.
Yes, yeah. And if you're familiar with The Prisoner, this is one of a few episodes that's a bit prisonery at this point in the series, which is not surprising because of David Tomblin being on board at this point.
Being a bit prisonery, yeah, it makes sense completely.
Yes.
So, shall I hit us, as is tradition, with our ridiculously badly written synopsis?
Yeah, you go ahead, yeah.
Okay. When Shadow Interceptor pilot Regan and his wife Jean find a Siamese cat in the road, it spells trouble for them. First, Jean is abducted by UFOs, then Regan begins to go crazy in a frenzy, which reaches a climax when he knocks out Colonel Foster unconscious. It's Straker who first realises that Regan is being turned into an automaton by the cat, which is in fact an alien being that has Regan in its power. The first step of the solution will be to catch the escaped cat by sending a pack of dogs after it. Yeah, we can deal with that particular solution, I think, in great depth later. Right, now, here we are. I just need one more thing to say at the beginning of this. Is Amazon actually run by aliens? Because the whole story is, the spookiness of the episode revolves around the fact that the woman who's having a dinner party finds an apparent, and I'll go into whether it's a Ouija set or not. She says it's a Ouija set, arrives on her doorstep, and rather than go, oh, it's for the neighbours, or what's going on, oh, badly delivered or something, she just opens it and goes, oh, I'll have that. So yes. That's not great.
Yeah, and it's never really explained.
No,
like
and in next time's episode, there's a telescope involved, and that arrives obviously by alien intervention as well. I don't want to do any spoilers, but I think aliens running Amazon is something we should investigate properly. Strange delivery service.
Yes. Also, the whole this episode begins with a Thunderbirds-style montage of clips from the episode, doesn't it? Over the opening credits of who's in it.
We see that's
which
the
is
problem.
very odd, because it's not. We haven't had this up to this point in UFO.
No,
so it's suddenly like, oh, hang on, what's this? Oh, right, it's telling us what's going to be in the episode.
Exactly, and that, I'm on record as saying, is one of the single most annoying things in television. For a start, it just confuses me because like there was a cat, and the cat was already in. And yeah, you're right, because like on Jessica Fletcher on Murder She Wrote, it's like tonight on, and you're like, stop it! I've already said I'll watch this. Don't do this to me. Like, I've agreed with you, I'll watch this. Don't show me the best bits.
So I would generally be with you, but I think it works on Thunderbirds. I quite enjoy it on Thunderbirds, mainly because the music that goes along with that bit. Whereas with this, it's just a sort of genteel, it's some UFO background music. And initially, you don't realise what's happening. You think, oh, this is the beginning of the episode, because that's what you've been led to expect from the previous. Well, I say the previous 18. In some regions, this episode was broadcast third.
Which I can see the point. Right, okay. Now, you've got the opening titles, right?
Yeah.
And the woman... So we've had the proper UFO opening titles, and we've had the attack on things. But then it goes into Regan being scanned by a light, and the cat clearly walking through Shadow headquarters. Now,
Yes.
for me, I didn't see that as later on in the episode. I saw that as an ongoing thing that had happened. Like the cat had already infiltrated the headquarters at some point and just hadn't been seen, and was doing a recon, and he's been being brainwashed steadily over time by the aliens. So I didn't even see that. So I'm obviously clearly not paying enough attention.
Yes. No, that is those are all clips from later in the episode.
Okay.
What do we think of Foster and Regan's judo match?
Well, that's one of them was prisonery bits.
Well, this is what I was thinking. I was like, it's
all
like
it
a game of
needed was
Kosho.
yes, all it needed was a load of trampettes, and you're done.
And a swimming pool. Yeah. But it felt very much like, oh yes, this is the prisoner fights a number bit of that. Although that only happens in, I think, 2 episodes of The Prisoner. It's one of those things that you think is in it more and then isn't. And then, I mean, should we just keep on talking about The Prisoner? Because Alexis Canner, who is the main guest star of this episode, who the episode revolves around, I mean, if you've seen him anywhere else, it's probably going to have been that. In those final... Oh, well, he plays 3 different characters in 3 different episodes of The Prisoner.
Or does he?
Well, one of them dies. Yeah. One of them dies, and one of them's in the final episode. So I think you can safely conclude. Oh, actually, in the final episode, they bring somebody back to life. So actually, that doesn't mean anything, does it?
That's exactly what I was about to say. So yeah.
What do you think of his performance in this?
I think it's really well written. There's a lot of, because the guy's clearly never been in an episode before, but it's written as if we've seen him loads beforehand, and there's a lot of world building going on. There's a lot more world building in this episode, which is one of the reasons I like it, to provide background and things like that.
Yeah,
and he comes across as a much more. In fact, all 3 of the pilots come across as quite rounded people. You know, one of them is going home to cut the grass.
Yes,
and that's kind of unexpected. It's like, yeah, they're pilots, but you know, this is their job. They're basically the Coast Guard. And
well, it's the other 2 appear in future episodes, so it's almost like this is being set up as this is your new Interceptor crew, isn't it? Because previously you'd had Mark Bradley at the beginning of the series being a staple of Interceptor crews. And you'd had a revolving cast of Interceptor pilots, but he was a sort of steady rock, as it were, for part of it. And then this is sort of, in this second production block, you have Stephen Burkoff's character, who appears in a few more episodes, and then Al Mancini, who memorably appears in Mindbender. So it's like these 3 guys being set up as these are your new regulars. But obviously by the end of this episode, spoilers, one of them's dead.
Right, can I just say, right, you know I've owned this box set since Christmas, and we've been doing this since last October.
Yep.
But I still haven't watched the last 2 episodes.
Oh, you're holding off Mindbender and The Long Sleep?
I certainly am, yeah. And because I don't want it to end. And also, I did try watching them, and I was kind of, this feels weird. So I will watch them, but I haven't seen them yet. Because it's that second production block. I'm thinking, I don't know whether it feels as good or not. So I will be able to report back on those with much more clarity later. So anyway, so Regan has got a wife, and they seem to get on quite well, which is nice. And he journeys back home, and there's a space dock, which is nice, run by well, I'm sure that name will come up at some point, which came as a surprise. I was like, wait, sorry, he's got a bit part? What's going on here? But yeah, and Straker's character definitely takes a back seat in this, because this is all about Regan, this whole major episode. What's the character called in The Prisoner? He's a 12, different. Is he?
He's different. I think he's number 48 in possibly the final episode he's in.
Yeah.
And then in The Girl Whose Death, he's the photographer at the fairground.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're doing Prisoner Watch already.
Yeah, but
at
the
this point,
thing is, it's such a major part of Prisoner that you kind of need. It would be like having Leo McKern in an episode of UFO. You'd have to talk about it.
Yes.
Which, of course, spoilers, he's not.
No, but you do have a number 2 in this episode, briefly, as well. So.
Yes, who plays someone who just takes photographs of holidays and wants to share things.
And
I believe
earthworms
right?
and butterflies and things.
That's him. Yes.
He's quite unlike the character he plays in The Prisoner. Yes. So we have the thing you didn't mention, which I mean, did you pick up on this initially, or was it only later when they're doing the séance and the Ouija board? Because he briefly gestures towards his wife's stomach, and I initially thought, oh, does that mean she's pregnant? And then obviously that's confirmed.
Like in the lines.
Yeah, with a kind of couple of scenes later, are we having a boy or a girl?
Yeah, and what happens if the answer is no, and it's what happens if it's twins and things? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, which is it's that whole thing of, and so you're a bit older than me.
Yes.
Like, was kind of Ouija board and seances, was that more of a staple of TV?
Right. Here we go. Right. And now I get to rant. Okay. Right. Strictly speaking, the Ouija board, the spirit board, is a board which is wooden and can be used to contact apparent spirits. And I'm using the rabbit ears here.
Right.
Using some sort of table tapping thing. Now, this isn't a Ouija set. This is actually a card game you can get, which is like ordinary playing cards that have letters of the alphabet on, and you can lay them out. And some people in movies especially use these cards. I think it's more of a staple of the Hammer films.
Right.
Which isn't strictly speaking a Ouija board, because Ouija board is in fact copyright, weirdly, of something like MB Games. It's a company in the States who owns this game when it was sold as a game for years, and it was a staple of really bad horror films. It's a quick way of getting people into spiritual situations, things like that, sort of borderline seances. Now, when I was at school, they became quite popular. It was the time of major teachers' strikes, so there was a lot of sitting around without any teachers in the room. So people would use things. Please bear with me. People would use like deodorant lids and things like that, just to do that whole Ouija board thing where you were pushing glasses around. Now, for a start, I've never done it for many reasons. One of them would, at the time, I was ridiculously, oddly spiritual and scared of all sorts of things. But looking back on it now, it's mainly because I couldn't spell. And genuinely, there could be an actual spirit telling me something. And I'd be going, what is that? It's a cat? Catastrophe? What? I wouldn't know where the spaces were. There's never a space on these boards when they're spelling words out. They all run together. It's like some sort of web address. And the guy actually says, I wasn't spelling out seance because I wouldn't know how to spell it. And I'm thinking, yeah, mate, I'm with you there.
That would be you.
That would be, and it's ridiculous. So then you've got the seance and the seance scenes, which are still my favourite all-time one. And I've mentioned this before on the show, is Night of the Demon, which you still haven't seen, but it's a glorious seance scene. But this one's not badly done at all. So there you go. That is the shortened my experience of Ouija boards in the past.
Yes. So again, there's that bit with the light over his head, which again looks very much like an episode of The Prisoner. I'm not gonna apologise for banging on about that.
No, go for it.
But in terms of the story, what do you think's going on in this scene? Because it's not until afterwards that they're on the way home where they run into the cat and the aliens get them for the first time. So nothing weird is starting to happen.
The memory
to Regan
is cheating.
At that point.
I'm thinking that the cat walks past the house when it gets delivered.
Yeah, which it doesn't.
Right. See, I had a memory of that. So clearly the memory is cheating.
I don't think. I mean, I've just been watching it and I didn't see that happen. So maybe yeah. But I think they don't run into the cat until just just after
and
when they're heading home.
That is a weird thing. That needs so more going into.
But first of all, so something weird does seem to be happening at the séance.
Yes.
He puts it down to being tired.
Mm-hmm.
But is something actually happening at that point in terms of spookiness?
In terms of the program, I'm thinking what's happening is that the aliens are making further contact with him, because my reading was they'd already made contact with him earlier on, which is why they'd shown you the light, which you've now said is a scene from later on in the episode.
Yeah, but then when he stops the car, he's asleep, and then his eyes open, and then and he's looking up, and he immediately stops the car, and he says to his wife that he's seen the cat. But the implication is that he hasn't seen the cat. The implication is that he's been woken up by presumably the alien mind in the cat, alerting him to the fact. So it's almost like the episode is setting him up to be susceptible in the first place.
Yeah, I can see that now. I think that's the bit I'm actually up to on the screen, so I'll pay attention to it now. But yeah, he is driving, and and he does look quite.
When he's
tired.
driving, then he swaps to being the passenger because he's too tired. So he's actually asleep when that moment happens. Are
you saying the whole episode's a dream?
No, I'm not saying the whole episode's a dream. I'm saying that
right.
I think what the episode is doing with the séance, and then with him seemingly having a sixth sense for the cat, is suggesting that he is already susceptible to what's going on, and obviously then the aliens get them.
Although strictly speaking, narratively wise, the séance isn't required for the plot. Apart from the fact that they need to have gone out for the day in order to be driving on the way home.
Exactly. So it's
for plot mechanics, all that's needed is for them to have gone out. So they could have gone to a restaurant if the time wasn't needed to be filled with a bit of atmosphere. But you're right. He pulls the brake on. He wakes up, pulls the brake on, and he has been told that there's a cat. The cat is influencing his head. Yeah, I'm with you.
So completely. I think the thing with the séance is it's just one of those things that provides atmosphere for the episode and tells you that there's kind of signals what kind of episode it's going to be, and that it's going to be playing with ideas of mind and body and who's in control. Because in a sense, what happens is that Regan becomes the medium for the alien consciousness transmitted from the cat.
Right, got you.
And then obviously becomes controlled, but increasingly controlled by it, but by the end of the episode.
Now, clearly this is important. Are you a cat person or a dog person?
I would say I was neither.
Right. Interesting.
My daughter absolutely loves dogs. She's a toddler and doesn't really speak yet, but she squeals happily every time she sees a dog when we go to the park. So I'm learning to approach dog owners and say hello so that my daughter can see the cats.
Oh, right,
the dogs.
Question. Clearly, I'm a cat person. But right. Does she know? Does the wife? Does Mrs. Regan know what Regan does for a living?
No, I think the implication is that she doesn't. I think, like Foster, we learn that Foster has.
It's just what I was
a girlfriend back home.
Because in that case, his wife looks up. They've gone for a drive. They've been to a house. She looks up and goes, "Oh look, flying saucer." Right, at no point, I know her reaction is basically to point, and then they both pass out.
Yeah.
But it's just a very odd moment, because if she knows that he's involved in flying saucers, then that's, possibly, I don't know. It's just a very odd reaction. But basically, she's holding the cat, but she's about to drive, and she's still holding the cat before she looks up and goes, "Oh, look, a flying saucer." And then we see inside the flying saucer, which of course consists of a big black room.
Yes.
And then he wakes up
very
inside
cleverly
of his
done, isn't
Goldwing
it?
coat. Yeah, a big black room and a shiny light. That's it. So, sorry, right. Okay, the cat used in this is a Siamese.
Yes.
The Siamese has some subtypes and one of them is the Havana Brown, because somebody tried to breed a black one. And my cat, Gimli, is one of those. So basically he is a Siamese cat, but dressed in like he's the colour of galaxy chocolate.
Right.
Right, and he was a rescue cat because there was a breeder getting rid of, sort of clearing the decks. And he's just ridiculously chilled. But basically I've got a Siamese, and they are one of the few types of cats you can actually train, which would be why they've used them in this.
Right.
You can train them to, considerably less than a dog, but more than almost any other breed of cat. They will answer to their name. They will come if you get them. They'll actually fetch stuff, weirdly.
Yeah.
If you don't try too hard. So it's an ideal breed to use in a TV program, is what I'm saying, if you were going to train them. Now, how the cat manages to sneak into Shadow headquarters is beyond me.
Well, it follows Regan into the lift, doesn't it?
Right, now,
and
have
Miss Holland doesn't notice it, and nobody else notices it.
Exactly. I've worked in various places over the years, and all it reminds me of is once when I was working in the bookshop, a bird flew in. It was possibly one of the most exciting things that ever happened. So if you were in a high-security establishment, hundreds of yards underground, and a cat walks in, you're going to start, you won't just go, oh, we've got ourselves a mascot. You'll go, what's going on?
Yes.
Yes, which is not the reaction.
It's very silly. It's very silly.
Yes. Right. I should look at my notes because I really am all over the place, as always. So
another thing of note in this episode is the return of Colonel Lake.
Yes.
With no fanfare whatsoever.
No.
As we said last time.
As if she's been there all along, yeah.
Yes, as we said last time, Sound of Silence was the beginning of the new production block, but she wasn't in that. So here she is for the final 8 episodes of the series, basically taking the Alec Freeman role.
Did we ever find out what Alec was doing instead? Oh, sorry, I mean what the actor was making.
I don't know. I was chatting to somebody at ShadowCon, and they were saying that story is nonsense, and that actually it was Lou Grade saying, I don't like his face, as in he's too ugly, get rid of him.
Fair enough. Lou Grade seemed quite an odd character like that. Yeah.
The version that I've seen written everywhere I've read about it says that no, he had some other work that he was contracted to do. So I don't know what to believe really.
Right.
So.
Which brings us, I think, to the. Shall we discuss not the elephant in the room, the pivotal moment of the whole episode as far as UFOs are concerned, which is the chat with Dr. Jackson.
Doing his fractional distillation. It's kind of on-screen shorthand for "I'm a scientist."
It certainly is. What's he doing? Is he doing gin? Is he creating just some vodka or something? I don't know what he's doing with.
Well, he's Polish, isn't he? So possibly vodka.
That is likely and slightly racist, if not a generalisation.
Yeah,
Let's go.
It's a stereotype, I would say.
It certainly is with his Liebig condenser thing.
Yes.
So yeah, he decides weirdly to go, hey. Forster comes in. No,
and he's like, I've got this report.
Paul comes in and goes, hello, I'm hardly in this episode. I'll be standing around for this episode looking lovely in this purple suit.
Yes.
But why don't you tell me what your latest theory?
Yeah, but the thing is he gets this report and then he then kind of tells them stuff from his observations, which don't seem to be going to it's like I saw this in the brain, and you're like, well, why did you need to read your notes to suddenly realise what was going on? But yes, it's an interesting revelation, isn't it? That the idea that actually
it is a theory. I mean, it's also there is a parallel theory which also works with the continuity of the show, which is that the aliens are using humans to turn some of them just into drones to do the legwork for them.
Yes, but then where does the cat fit in? Because the way that the cat...
The cat's a transmitter, isn't it? Because the cat is controlling... Later on, the cat is controlling Regan from Earth to the moon.
Which seems a bit odd.
Which seems a bit odd. I mean, if the cat had snuck on board the ship or was like with them or something like that, and he had to throw it out the airlock or something, which is just as bad an ending as setting the dogs on it. It's very dodgy.
And also, all the cat had to do was run away. I suppose maybe it was a case of the cat had to stay still to focus on what it was doing. But obviously, it was literally seconds away from Regan blowing up Moonbase. And you think they'd want to kind of get the cat to survive. I mean, I suppose it makes. Does it make more sense? The cat is therefore more disposable if it's not actually got an alien consciousness inside of it. It's just a transmitter.
I genuinely think it sounds great, but I genuinely think it's like if you look at it too closely, it makes the closer you look, the less sense it makes. When you think of the whole of the rest of the program.
It's also never followed up. Like, this is the only episode in which it's a thing. And again, I can imagine if you were in a region where this was played third, you would expect them to develop that further. And then obviously there are episodes that you would see later where they do further autopsies on aliens where this theory wouldn't come up.
And also, why did they take Regan's wife? They want our women.
Regan's wife was presumably taken for spare parts. And because they say that a whole bunch of people have been taken from that road.
That's true. And it was only because somebody had a dodgy ticker who was left.
That they left him behind and killed them,
And Regan. So it's like, why have they left him? Oh, tell you what, let's not investigate that. Let's just send him back to work.
It's the
flaw. That's the flaw in the episode for me.
Well, it's the whole Straker being Straker thing taken to the extremes, isn't it? Or it's maybe kind of Straker's like, I know what the computer's going to say because I think logically about these things. What this chap needs is to go back to work, not to be able to kind of grieve for his dead wife. He obviously admits later that he's got it wrong, but But anyway, but we seem to be kind of pulling at the threads and unraveling the episode. But you quite like this one. I do.
And like I said, it's one of those ones, like lots of episodes of Doctor Who. If you look at it too closely, it'll all fall apart. But if you just let it wash over you, the atmosphere, the way it's been shot, the build-up, the characterization, the actual threat, the plan behind it all, the complicatedness, you're figuring it out as they're figuring it out, works for me much more than, say, even The Sound of Silence, which is a decent enough episode. But I just enjoyed this. I do. Even if it is Windsor Davies turning up for no reason. But I don't know. Maybe it's the cat. I don't know. But yeah, this episode and the following one are two of my favourite, for very different reasons, of the whole of the run. I think it's because they just feel like we're getting somewhere with the aliens as well, especially in this one. But again, we're not, because they don't go into it. They don't follow it up. It's just another theory. And until they can sit down with an alien and find out what they actually want, it'll always just be another theory.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember way back with the first episode, where based on what I had understood from the dialogue, and then there was an argument in the comments about whether I was right about this, but this idea that actually the bodies aren't entirely being transplanted from humans.
Yeah.
The idea that they could be plundering several other alien planets for organs.
Which is nice. And if you were bringing back the series now, I would definitely go down that road.
Yeah. And then this just adds another layer to it of going, well, yes, are any of the bodies originally...
right, here we are. Let's go metaphysical for a moment. Okay.
Right.
The cat can transmit influence and influence onto somebody else, which I'm guessing uses the similar technology that the aliens have to transport themselves if they are beings of pure mind that inhabit other beings. They are the ultimate parasite race. So, therefore, the influence must travel either faster than light or at light speed. We'll go with light speed, which means, of course, there has to be a delay between the cat dying on Earth and him being able to pull up on the moon. Yes.
I mean, it would be a delay of a
2.5 minutes.
few.
No. What is it? It's a no. The
would-
Earth.
it's-
the Earth
it's
to the
sec-
Sun is 4.5 minutes. The Earth to the Moon is a.
It's going to be
I used to know
seconds.
this. I used to know this. Yeah, it's going to be seconds, but there is going to be a definite
Yes.
delay involved. Right.
Yeah.
But if the soul, let's call it that, of the aliens has zero mass, it can travel faster than the speed of light. But then we wouldn't need flying saucers. So,
But I think you've got the bigger problem of if an alien consciousness can inhabit a human body,
why haven't they just all done it?
well, why don't they just when a body fails, why don't they just get a whole new one rather than transplanting organs into the existing host?
Yes.
Weirdly,
I think that this is the plot of the film, The Host, and book,
is it?
written by the woman who wrote Twilight. Don't watch the film; you'll never get those 2.5 hours back.
No, I won't bother.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, part of Jack Jackson's thing is basically saying that certain parts of the brain have been removed to make it unemotional and basically totally logical and without emotion. So there's an element of going, well, clearly an aspect of lobotomy has to happen for an alien consciousness to be put into a host.
Similar to the Cybermen, let's call it that.
So I think you're right, Michael. I think it's one of these things where you just have to go, okay, let's go with it. Let's go with the fact that an alien can be inside a cat. That an alien can be inside a cat and control a person for its ends, and that when you kill the creature that is doing the controlling, then the controlled person awakens
is
from
the alien
his
inside the cat
controllingness.
because the cat doesn't have those bits of the brain that would need to be removed for the alien to control a person? Because they're pure animal. Or have I given this much more thought than the writer did?
I think we've probably given this much more thought than the writer did.
Okay.
I think, like you say, this is David Tomblin doing David Tomblin-y weird stuff, and the way it's shot. I mean, some of the cinematography is like nothing else that you see in the series, and
or indeed anywhere really. I mean, the point of view stuff from the cat. I've not seen lenses like that used before.
Yeah, I don't know what they stuck on the front of the camera, but
no idea.
It's one of those things where you go, okay, right, I'm seeing through the eyes of a cat. Fine, I'd say that. The other thing is that if it is an alien taking on being inside the cat, the alien is clearly affected by being inside a cat because he passes that on to Regan, who fights Foster like a cat.
That is true. Yes.
So there's an element of going, well, if the aliens are taking over human bodies in general, what of the human survives? And such that, for example, the episode of Question of Priorities, is it because is the reason that the alien is defecting because the original personality of that body is reasserting itself? I mean, did you even suggest that at the time when we did that episode?
I think I might have, yes, because again, it strikes me as the sort of thing that I would fixate on.
And we had to sort of nip that in the bud because I was like, I don't want to spoil things for future episodes.
I get it. Yeah. So, right, is there anything else you need to bring up? Because we won't get an answer out of this one.
No. I mean, the other thing to say, I mean, we talked about the fact that the cat getting into Shadow HQ was ridiculous. What's more ridiculous is Regan getting back to Moonbase without anybody noticing until it was too late.
But that's Windsor Davis. Windsor Davis even lets him do it. And he goes, I've received an order. Oh, okay, then. It's
all right,
going into space. It's not, being let in the back door of a supermarket.
But it's not just him. It's whoever's piloting the craft. It's whoever meets him when he arrives in Moonbase. It's like he walks through the door of the leisure sphere, and that's the first anybody's seen of him since he left Earth, which is somewhat unbelievable.
There is perhaps it has something to do with the director and the writer being the same person, which means the director can't go to the writer. Are you sure about this? Because that's already been done. That level of filtration and questioning hasn't occurred.
Yeah.
So, because that kind of reading up on the book, that sort of thing did happen. People they were discussing the next few episodes. As they were being produced and things like that. So, yeah. Right now, obviously, I've mentioned Windsor Davies, who is, I've looked it up, is still alive.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. Now, I only know this because, obviously, he's got the Anderson connection with Terrorhawks playing Sergeant Major Zero. When they were going to bring back Terrorhawks on audio with Big Finish, they did approach him and say, "Do you want to play him again?" And the guy said, his daughter said, he'd love to, but he's not as well as he could be. And I've looked up, he's nearly 90. So that would explain it. But he was such a big character in the 70s. In the 70s and 80s. He was like always on TV. An 8.5 Hot Mum was, all right, it's got some questionableness about it now. But if you were growing up at the time and you didn't question those things, and you had relatives who had served in Burma, you kind of just accepted it for what it was. And when you watched 8.5 Hot Mum, yes, it's not going to be perfect, but it was a major part. And of course, he's in Carry On. I think it might be Carry On England, but I think it's not. It's Carry On Behind, which is like Carry On Camping, but it's set later, so it's a slightly less impressive production. Yes, I have seen all the Carry On films. And I think I can safely
say that I've not seen. I've probably seen a clip of a Carry On film, but I've not seen a Carry On film.
And that's the difference, because I'm 8 years younger than you, and
older. You mean?
Yeah, you're 8 years younger than me. Yeah,
yes,
fair enough. But those 8 years, society did change in those 8 years. It genuinely did. Yep.
And to me, the only other thing that I knew Windsor Davies from was his appearance in Doctor Who. So he's obviously a bigger figure in your mind than he is in mine.
Well, also, I was a gigantic Terrorhawks fan as well.
Yep. And again, Terrorhawks is not... I suppose Terrorhawks was on just before and around the time that I was born, and then it didn't get repeated when I was a kid, which is how I got into Thunderbirds and stuff. So
which is
Terrorhawks wisely passed me by.
It was just a massively fun show.
Though, we did have a cassette tape with a random bunch of theme tunes on, which we used to listen to in the car on holidays. And one of the things on that tape was the Terrorhawks theme tune, which was one of the most exciting things. Are we going to talk about Firestorm?
We can. We should. In fact, you should, because I've not seen it, because I didn't give money towards the campaign.
Oh, right. So, for those who haven't, and there is a reason to talk about it because it links to UFO. The reason I brought it up now is because Richard Harvey, I think, who composed the Terrorhawks theme tune, has composed the theme tune for Firestorm, which, if you didn't know, was the Ultramarionation project that Jamie Anderson has been working on for a number of years. And they did a Kickstarter, which I backed for £10, which means I've been able to see the episode. And there is a craft in it which launches, it basically surfaces, and then immediately a plane takes off from the top of it. So it's not quite Skydiver, but they've basically said in the pre-production that they modelled it on Skydiver. It's like Skydiver's big brother.
Nice.
And I was watching that bit, and it's such a I mean, the whole thing's beautifully shot. There's some fantastic model work. It was like properly watching a Jerry Anderson production, which you'd expect. And it's one of those ones I'm just like, I hope it goes to series. I hope they manage to find the backers that they need to properly produce it. The puppets are great. They actually can emote properly now.
Apparently they're massive. I've been listening to the Jerry Anderson podcast, and the last 2 episodes as we record this, they've been talking to McKinnon and Saunders, which is rather sadly, and I can be all geeky about this now, that was part of Cosgrove Hall, and then they set up by themselves, and I was working there, which is when I met Jerry Anderson, because he was finishing Lavender Castle, so they split off then. And that was when Jamie, I think I missed meeting Jamie when he was about 12 by about a week, because he was in there at the time. But anyway, McKinnon and Saunders was in the office at the side, and now they're based in Altrincham, and they're the ones who've built the puppets, and that's who Jamie's been talking to on his podcast of late.
I think I possibly got an animation armature from McKinnon and Saunders. When I was getting into animation in my late teens. I definitely bought one from some company like that to build a plasticine model around.
Well, they are ridiculously talented. They're the ones who made the original Mars Attacks figures that ended up being redone with CGI, but the original 3D animation was done.
Barry Purvis.
With that in mind. And indeed, yes.
Who I met.
Anyway, that's that end of things.
Barry Purvis came and did a lecture when I was at uni.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he came and did, he was a guest. It was brilliant.
That would have been fantastic.
He showed us some of his Aardman stuff. I can't remember what it was exactly, all of the stuff that he did. But I mean, the thing I know him from mainly is the Shakespeare one that he did for Aardman. And I don't think I knew until then. Oh, it's lovely. But I don't think I knew until that lecture when he said, "Oh yeah, I did the stuff for Mars Attacks," and then Tim Burton changed his mind and did it in CGI. And you're like, really? But it was in that sort of mid-90s era where it was a toss-up between do you use CGI or do you use traditional animation techniques?
Tim Burton really wanted to use the traditional 3D animation. It's just it was going to take too long to make the film.
Right.
If everyone was done with the Ray Harryhausen 3D animation using maquettes thing, it was just going to take too long.
It's going to take too long.
And
there's a lot of CGI in that film.
And you needed to reproduce 100. We had. I was shown the original sculpts, and
wow.
Basically, when you're doing these things, you've got blown via. I'm going off memory now, so bear with me. It's like a blown foam in over a skeleton, and the molds can only be used say 10 times, but they needed hundreds of these things. So you needed to produce a series of masters, which you would then take secondary master molds from, and then reproduce, turn those into actual masters. It was a nightmare, which I think was part of the problem why Tim Burton was like, no. But then he came back to them and said, let's do Frankenweenie. I'm no expert. I wanted to be, and, working on Bob the Builder was one of my favourite memories. But things are, time moved on. The whole world went, CGI, let's do this over here. And I've got a load of skills which are of no use to anyone. So,
the industry is a lot smaller than it was, and so there isn't enough work for everybody.
Yeah, you now have to be remarkably talented rather than just quite talented, which is where I live. I live in the quite talented area. So I'm very realistic about these things. I've met the actual talented people, and trust me, they are talented. So, getting back to this Firestorm thing.
Yes. So the cliche of the dog food commercial. So you've got some dogs on site who are conveniently able to chase down the cat and kill it. What do we think of that?
Well, I like the way that as a Chekhov's gun, it's loaded quite early on and almost unnoticeably. The guy just says, I'm going for a walk around the studio, and he does that walk around the studio quite a few times in the program, so that it's like you don't really question it. You just go, that's quite odd. Move on. It's not important. I didn't put cats and dogs together in my head, because in my head, cats and dogs actually get on quite well. And also, when you see it later on, the dogs that are running around hunting the cat are a pack of hounds from like Hunt, rather than the dogs you see earlier on, which are a variety of different breeds.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's another one of those bits where they just go, "We hope you don't notice this." But at the same time,
if a cat's going to be killed by a load of dogs, I'm going to notice.
Yes, and I think I don't know. You probably know more about cats and dogs than I do, but I mean those hounds are bred to chase foxes, right? So
yeah,
the fact that you're suddenly getting them to chase a Siamese cat is a bit weird.
Yeah, well, normally they would have to have got given the scent, and what's to stop the alien jumping into one of the dogs?
Well, I mean, we don't know what the process is, do we? My assumption would be that there's some technology involved in transferring an alien consciousness from well, however it gets into a being.
Yeah.
So I think we can give them that one. We can just say, well...
no, okay, fair enough, yeah. No, hands up, that's fine. So
it's not, yeah.
Hang on, I've just realised, you mentioned Firestorm, but was there an end reason, or was it just saying that it's on its way to being made?
No, I mean, it was just that connection between the guy who wrote the theme tune, Richard Harvey, who wrote the theme tune for Terrorhawks and Firestorm, and then suddenly going, well, actually, there's a UFO homage in Firestorm,
right?
And if we did it properly, there would be a proper crossover with people who've been in Doctor Who and stuff, but we haven't got the time for that.
You know,
maybe that will be an addendum.
You know, there's the zoom as the spaceship, as the what's it called, the interceptor, as the interceptor's flying towards Moonbase.
Yes.
The shot of Moonbase is by far the shoddiest model shot in the entire program, in the entire series.
You see at the beginning as well when they're shooting at Moonbase, and it's just, it looks like a model. Like all the rest of the series, you can just about believe that this is a genuine thing.
Yeah.
And then they shoot it from above like that, from that high angle, and you're like, it's a model. It's just a model. And it's just takes you out of the episode.
It does, but, you know, if you've ever been in an airplane, sometimes you look out the windows and think, oh, everything looks like a model. So perhaps that's what it is. So
maybe.
Shall we do our prisoner watching things?
Oh,
because I know we've mentioned them all.
It's a bumper thing, and there's a bunch of people who are in several categories. So it might be, I've got them listed by Anderson Watch, Doctor Who Watching, Prisoner Watch, but it might just be easier to take each of them in turn and go, which things were they in?
Okay, let's go for it.
So I mean, we've pretty much covered David Tomblin.
Yes.
Who, for those that didn't know, was the co-creator and producer of The Prisoner. So was sort of Patrick McGowan's right-hand man. But he also wrote and directed The Girl Who Is Death and Living in Harmony. And he was also co-writer on the very first episode, Arrival. So it had a lot to do with setting up The Prisoner. And to be honest,
was he the guy who thought that it was a direct, that The Prisoner was in fact was Danger Man?
I wouldn't know. Quite possibly.
I think that was the way he approached the series. He was like, no, it is a spy drama, and he is Danger Man. But we'll just not mention it. Yeah.
But so here's the question for you, though. Did you know what other Anderson stuff he was involved with?
I don't.
So he wrote another couple of episodes of UFO, which we will come to in future weeks, Reflections in the Water, and the final episode, The Long Sleep, which you haven't seen yet, so I'm not going to say anything about that. But bear that in mind when you watch it, that it was written by him.
Okay.
But he also directed an episode of The Protectors and 4 episodes of Space 1999.
Which I've just put on my Christmas list.
Okay. People keep telling us we should be doing a Space 1999 podcast next. We still haven't decided what we're doing next.
I'm not convinced.
No. Who else did you notice? Let's just go with that, Michael, because there's lots to go through. But who else did you notice?
To be honest, I completely fixated on the fact that Windsor Davis was in this, and I did such a happiness thing. But then again, I forgot which episode of Doctor Who he was in, so I was all over the show.
Well, I mean, so you've already told us who he was Anderson-wise, which was Sergeant Major Zero in Terrorhawks. He's in the Evil of the Daleks. He's the he plays a guy called Toby, so he's in one of the episodes that survives from that story. He's a sort of layabout tramp character.
Got you.
Who I think is.
No, I'm picturing it now. Yeah.
Possibly bumped off, but I forget. It's not a story that I'm overly familiar with because it's mostly missing, and I've only read it the once or twice. So, that's him. Anybody else that you noticed?
No. I
not
literally
even from their voice.
Oh, you're gonna mess with my head now, and then I'm gonna go. No, seriously, just go with it.
Right, okay. Well, we'll come to her later, the voice that you should have recognised. Anyway, so we've got Stephen Burkoff.
Yes.
Who
was in who was in The Power of Three?
He was in The Power of Three as the Shakri. I mean, obviously at this point in his career, he was a sort of up-and-coming actor. By the time he appeared in Doctor Who, he was a sort of very well-respected actor with a long career behind him.
Yeah.
But yes, he's in 3 more episodes of UFO, including next week's. And he's also in an episode of Space Precinct, apparently.
No.
So, yeah, apparently so.
That comes out on DVD quite soon.
Well, and you can catch up with him in the episode Deadline, playing Dr. Paul Jory.
Okay.
Moving on to Al Mancini, or Mancini. So I mentioned him before. He's the third of the pilots.
He's the Interceptor pilot, yeah.
Yeah, who notably comes back in Mindbender. But you haven't seen that yet, so again, I won't say any more. But he's
I have watched the first 2 minutes of Mindbender and went,
okay.
No, this is going to need a lot more concentrating than I've got on me right now.
Yes. Did you ever read Adventures with the Wife in Space when they did Mindbender?
No, because I've kept that to one side in order to to read it afterwards. I don't want to have my opinion coloured beforehand.
No.
But I suspect Sue was a bit,
No, Sue loved it. Sue loved it. I won't say any more, but Sue loved it. There are reasons why she would love it. But he was also in an episode of The Protectors. So another... I mean, pretty much most of the cast ended up doing something else with Jerry Anderson on this. But also, do you recognise him from The Prisoner?
You know what? I don't, because it's been such a long time since I've watched it, and I've got it lined up. I've got every episode on a memory stick, and I think I will start watching it again very soon. Well,
so you will spot him in the episode The General as the TV announcer on the Speedlearn broadcasts.
Oh, is he the person who says, and now someone who doesn't need an introduction, and then doesn't bother introducing them? It's brilliant.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that so much.
And that leads directly on to Colin Gordon, who was the
number 2,
slightly superfluous member of the Seance in this episode.
Yes.
But yes, was number 2 twice in The Prisoner alongside Patrick McGowan in The General and A, B and C. And then he was in Doctor Who alongside Wanda Ventham. So it all links up.
Oh, it's all one glorious thing.
Yes. So that was an episode called The Faceless Ones, which is, again, largely missing. But they're in that together. We've already talked about Alexis Canner, who was in The Prisoner several times. Strangely enough, had a box around his name in the credits, and I've never got to the bottom of that. Have you figured that one out?
No, but it usually means it's a contractual thing. It used to happen on posters a lot. It doesn't happen anymore. I remember you're appearing because, you're appearing courtesy of another production company.
Ah, okay.
I think I could be very wrong, and I'm more than willing to be told that I'm incorrect, but I think that's it.
Well, when we finally do a Prisoner podcast and we get to him, people can write in and tell us why he has a box around his name. Anyway, we are very nearly done with everything for this one. We just have Geraldine Moffat, who played Jean Regan, who appears in the Protectors episode Goodbye George. And apparently her sons made Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, that makes sense, yes.
And she does a voice in it, apparently. And last but by no means least is Lois Maxwell.
Who is...
Does that name mean anything to you, Michael?
No, it should. Oh, I feel such a bad fan.
Well, so she played Miss Holland in this, who is the replacement for Miss Eland, who's the receptionist at the thing. So she appears in another...
Hang on. Isn't she... Because she looked just like one of the Miss Moneypennies.
She is Miss Moneypenny, yes.
Oh, right. Okay. She looked just like her.
Yes.
Because she is her, right.
She is her. So she appears in another episode of UFO, The Man Who Came Back. But Jerry Anderson fans, of course, know her as the voice of Atlanta in Stingray.
So she is. So she is. Well, that makes all the... so much sense. Oh, everything's clear. It's all so clear. And with that, I think we've reached the end of the episode.
We have. So, what are we doing next time, Michael?
Next time, he said, quickly turning the page, is another one of my favourites, Destruction.
Well, we will see you in a fortnight with Destruction. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.